Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. So, for Thursday preview night, I opted to go say goodbye to 20th Century Fox's X-Men. 20-year saga, man, concluded last night. Now, granted, New Mutants still comes out next year, but there's a lot of reports saying that Disney got their hands on it. It's one of the reasons it was delayed. They reworked the script to make it scarier, did a lot of reshoots, and it's a group of mutants that we don't know. So, for me, Dark Phoenix is the conclusion to the Fox chapter of the X-Men, and, it's bittersweet, because, before the MCU, it was the X-Men. That was our go-to, man. X-Men and Spider-Man. But the X-Men, they were there first. And like I said, 20 years, man. We got Hugh Jackman and so many great things. And it's been rough to watch the conclusion of all of this. But I had to suck it up and go do it. And surprisingly enough, this movie is not good, but it's not unwatchable. And Sophie Turner is phenomenal. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We are getting ready to wrap up this 20-year Fox saga with the X-Men. Spoiler-free, talking about, of course, Dark Phoenix. And like I said, man, I went in for the preview night, and, I will talk about the movie, but, there was no reason not to go. I got a cool little X-Men, Dark Phoenix keychain. Fan service. So that was one reason to go last night. But, I was ready to go say goodbye and just kind of close this chapter. And like I said, man, this movie is a really interesting mixed bag. Sophie Turner does some phenomenal stuff. Almost all the performances are actually really good, but the writing is really hit or miss, right? Like Sophie Turner's stuff and the Jean Grey story stuff, I thought worked the most. They don't always work all the time. I think they take a lot of liberties with the Dark Phoenix story. It's not very comic accurate. And in doing so, they kind of insert things that get away from the stuff that I think they could have played more with. They could have done so much more with the Jean Grey bit. But her stuff works well. The other X-Men, although good performances, they're either undercut really a lot and just don't have very much, or what they're given just feels out of character. So as a whole, you kind of walk out of that movie and go, it wasn't very good. But there were things that I was glad I went to the theater to go see. And it starts with that, very, very first act, first 30 minutes. I thought they really set a good foundation for the Jean Grey character. And I liked the opening. It felt more like X-Men First Class and less like X-Men Apocalypse, which a lot more of this movie feels like. But I thought they did a really good job of that, and they provide really good emotional content for Sophie Turner. Like I said, I don't think the story is perfect. I think it can be done so much better, especially if you stick to the more comic accurate version of the story. But the what they gave Sophie, she just did so much with, man. What she's able to do from an emotional standpoint, the way she can swing from being really, really turmoiled to all of a sudden just like she's gone, Dark Phoenix is there, and just scary. And she's badass in this movie. The look, not so great. I couldn't figure out what was going on with her hair. It was like just in this constant like stuck position the whole movie. It was interesting. And when it did move, it was almost always CGI. They could have made her look better. But when she's doing Dark Phoenix stuff, oh man, it's so badass. And it's cool to watch. The special effects around the Dark Phoenix and the things that go on with that are really, really good. And everything that Sophie is doing on screen, you're just like, wow. Like, I'm so happy for Sophie Turner because she was one of those people in Game of Thrones, I think for years, everyone was just like, well, she'll never be anything. She's not great. But she's progressively gotten better throughout that entire series. I mean, rewatching it in the lead up to the last season, albeit not a great season, but watching that happen, like you really saw her grow as an actor. And then the question was, could she do anything other than Sansa? And the last two seasons really gave me hope there. And she does. She nails this movie. And I was just so happy for her. And the other thing that really helps this movie along a lot, besides just Turner's performance, Hans Zimmer and the score in this thing is spectacular. It's really, really good, man. Like, it really elevates a lot of moments that would be quite dull and boring, honestly. And really adds just so much to anything that Dark Phoenix or Jean Grey is doing on screen. Like, it just really captures that portion of the story well. And like I said, just enhances everything you're watching. Now, some of that disappointing writing, unfortunately, lands on our new group of the X-Men out of this team, right? Ty Sheridan as Cyclops, Alexander Shipp as Storm, Cody Smith-McPhee as Nightcrawler, and I'll even include two not new characters, right? Quicksilver, played by Evan Peters. It's the worst they've ever done with him. You look forward. The one thing you always look forward to in these X-Men movies is the cool Quicksilver scene, and it's about to happen, and then it doesn't, and you're like, ugh. But also, not just him, but same with Nicholas Holt's Beast. That group of five, I was just like, oh man, they're so underserved. Like, you took away the one thing Quicksilver's really good at. Beast, I don't think they've ever really gotten right, and they give him even less here. And then Cyclops literally just shoots holes in things with his laser beams. Storm is essentially a conduit for lightning, very similar to what they did with Halle Berry's character back in the day, and they do even less with here. She does look cool. She has a couple moments on screen where you're like, yeah! But then it's really just lightning blast, and you're like, oh, like, we're not going to make Storm like cool and badass the way she should be used. Her and Cyclops are honestly the two characters I cannot wait for Kevin Feige to get his hands on. If somehow Kevin Feige is watching this review right now, please, 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 please have Storm do more than just shoot lightning. Make her badass. Make her fight. Make it one of the most spectacular things you've ever seen. And just give Cyclops more. Like he's one of the best characters in the X-Men. And I don't know if they've ever really done it. I probably prefer James Marsden, but again, these are just two characters that deserve so much better than what they've gotten. And the same goes for Nightcrawler. Cody Smith-McPhee gets introduced here as Kurt Wagner, a.k.a. Nightcrawler, and he looks cool. And again, the performance, fine. I liked what he did, and he gets a moment, a nice little stretch in the movie where I was like, oh, that's really cool. And they utilize him quite well in that opening act, like I said, that first 35 minutes or so. That's really good, which includes the backstory and them going to space and the cosmic force kind of entering Jean. How they use him there and how they use him in that train sequence was cool, little uncharacteristic, but for the most part, I was like, oh, God, man, I wish I could have seen more of that. And that's the thing, man. It's like they all give good performances, but the middle of this movie, none of them are doing X-Men things. Like, almost no powers are used. And then, if you want to talk about powers, don't even get me started with Mystique. I thought the reason Mystique was going to suck in this movie was because Jennifer Lawrence is just done with the character. But in all honesty, props to Jennifer Lawrence. She is blue Mystique more in the movie than she is blonde Mystique, which is interesting because we saw her blonde, I think, more in the trailers than we saw her blue. She is in the blue stuff for the portion of the movie that she's in a lot. And she does a really good job with what she has. This felt like one of the least mailed-in performances from Jennifer Lawrence. It's just they gave her absolutely nothing to do, and she is not Mystique. She is Raven. They don't ever call her Mystique in the movie. She doesn't shapeshift into anything other than white blonde Mystique or Raven, and they just didn't give her anything. Like, she delivers a couple nice lines in the movie, and like I said, she does a good job performance-wise, but you just go, that's not Mystique. And I think they think it's not Mystique. She's not a good guy, for one. I've never liked that story. I liked it in First Class because like, oh, that's an interesting way. But then we never went into what these characters are supposed to be. So that was super frustrating. And again, one of those things where it's like, wow. And what happens with her character in this movie, once again, along with some other things, messes up the X-Men timeline again. And it boggles my mind because writer-director, this is his first directing go, but he has been writing and producing in this world of X-Men for a very long time. Simon Kinberg has been here for pretty much everything. How he forgot that this young version of the X-Men was introduced to fix the original timeline because they are all the young versions of the original X-Men we watched. What happens in this movie, you sit there and you go, okay, so there's literally no way to get to what we know from the beginning. This is completely gone in a direction where it's like, oh, so we forgot that they were the original X-Men, and this is all supposed to be the same continuity. Absolutely ruins the continuity one more time, and Raven Mystique is dead center of that, and it's frustrating as anything to watch. And the other thing that's frustrating is to watch two guys that I love so much as actors and have loved in this series, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, and just have them be versions of the characters that we don't recognize until the very, very end of the movie. They have a scene at the end of the movie where I was like, oh, okay, so we do know that we live in this world of X-Men where like there are things that happened before that now are still, this feels familiar. But the rest of the movie, I mean, we've essentially got, there are comic elements to all this stuff, but Magneto isn't being Magneto-ish, and he's not trying to be a bad guy either in this movie. He felt the least bad guy version of himself in any of them, and that drove me nuts. And Professor Xavier, which, granted, Xavier in the comics is known to cross the line sometimes, this just felt so out of character for him. Like, he is really the bad guy. He's super irresponsible, and just not smart with some of the decisions and things that he does. And while McAvoy and Fassbender do fantastic jobs as per usual, I just sat there and went, this doesn't feel right, man. Like, I just don't like what they're doing with these characters. And to have all of these people not show up and do anything really X-Men-y, there's like one short little bit where it's like, oh, here's some X-Men stuff. But otherwise, it's just a lot of not things happening and Dark Phoenix doing stuff. And then you get to the end. And the train sequence is the thing that helps salvage this movie as far as like being watchable. It's really fun, and you get to see everybody on display in that sequence. You get to see the X-Men working together as X-Men in that sequence, and it's really, really enjoyable. It was a lot of fun, and there are moments where you actually, that stretch was like the only time in the movie where I was like, yes, get him! I was like, oh, I actually got jacked for stuff. I think the thing that hinders this movie more than anything else is its villains. Or villains, right? There is an element to the villains in this movie that feels very, very similar to another group of villains that exist in the MCU. Now, granted, they give them the naming convention that is used in the comics. These villains do exist, and there is an element to them that is disguise-oriented, but it is not used the way that it's used in the comics. So, that aside, there were rumors, because it felt very much like that MCU villain group, that the rumors say there's a lot of reshoots and cuts and things change, especially to the end of the movie and to this group in particular. And it feels like that. It feels like whatever was built in for the villains in this movie to feel like real antagonists must have gotten carved out. And you're left with something that feels very, very, very generic. And when you're in there and you're doing a Dark Phoenix movie, I don't need a generic villain. The turmoil and trying to rein Jean in is enough in and of itself. So that really hurts the movie a lot too. And surprisingly, Jessica Chastain does a really good job with what she's done. And it gave me this, like, I would like to see bad guy version of Jessica Chastain. But they really don't give her anything to do, and that undercuts the movie, man. Right? Like, takes its legs out and makes it fall flat. Doesn't feel like the weight has been earned, because the bad guys aren't that bad or scary or anything other than just generic. Like, hey, placeholder villain for the X-Men to team up, beat, and get Jean come back and be Jean. So, like I said, man, this movie is a mixed bag. But if you're an X-Men fan, you should go see it. I don't think you'll walk out going, that was the biggest waste of my time ever. I think you'll kind of come in and go, it was rough, but, it was a nice way to say goodbye, I suppose, or it's at least the one that we have. So if you're in on X-Men stuff, even a bad X-Men movie can be enjoyable, and there are parts of this that are. If you're not an X-Men fan, or if you're a Sophie Turner fan too, you should go see this movie, because it was so nice to see what I think could be a very promising future for Sophie Turner. And like I said, it's just disappointing that you won't get to see. I don't think Kevin Feige is going to pull any of these guys over. I wish maybe they would. But you can't. You got to kind of start cleaning. That's kind of disappointing because it looks like they found something for Sophie Turner here that's really quite good. But alas. So if you're an X-Men Sophie Turner fan, for sure, check this out. If you're not, it's not something you need to see. And it's not necessarily something you need to see in the theater. If you're an X-Men or Sophie Turner fan, you can wait till this comes out on streaming. There's nothing really. I saw it in IMAX and it didn't really add anything. There were no like wow moments, So yeah, there you go. Those are all my thoughts on Dark Phoenix. I'm so conflicted, man, because I've loved this franchise at different parts, and in the 2 parts that they've created, both of them ended really, really not well. Thank God Logan exists. Hugh Jackman, man. But anyway, there you go, man. Those are all my thoughts. I'm not going to ramble anymore. Now I want to know what you're thinking, man. Have you checked out Dark Phoenix yet? What'd you think? Good? Bad? Did you like Sophie? Did you wish they did other things? Do you wish the movie didn't exist? Are you glad you saw it? Let me know all that down below. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to say if I enticed you, but if you're an X-Men fan or a Sophie Turner fan, what are you thinking? Do you want to go see this movie? Do you have any interest? And if you're not, do you have any interest whatsoever in a bad X-Men movie? Leave all those comments down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, you want to come hang out with the old C-Man, you gotta go hit that subscribe button, man, and then the little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. For the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I am the C-Man, and I am signing off. Peace! Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. C-Man's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the C-Man goodies, join the Cinema Sit Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.